Hello, welcome to the Financial Advantage podcast. We're powered by the Wells Funding Group. My name is Dennis Wells. I'm super excited to have Shay Hata with us here today. She is an amazing real estate agent in the Chicagoland area with At Properties. And Shay, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So tell us how you got started into the real estate business.
Sure. So, long story, very short. I went to an Ivy League school, and most of the colleagues from my school went on to become consultants and doctors and lawyers, and I did not want to do any of that. I wanted to work in business for myself. So, I started two different businesses, which I eventually sold to foreign investors. And then my now ex-husband suggested I get into real estate. He'd been in real estate for, at that point, probably 2 decades or something. And so I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And I ended up jumping in with both feet. I thought I would do it part time, just kind of on the side for something to do. And I ended up loving it. And here we are 13 years later, and I still really love it. So it's been a great fit.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm sure a lot of similarities between starting other businesses and starting a real estate business. What are some things that you've learned in your previous uh, endeavors that have applied to real estate as well?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned, my mom owned a cookie store when I was growing up. And so I would go into the cookie store at when I was 4 when she started it because she was a single mom and so she couldn't afford childcare. And so I had a little bed on the bottom of one of the racks, the like silver bakery racks, and I would sleep and then I would wake up and I learned more lessons watching her work than from anything else. I learned the value of hard work. You treat your business like a business. And I think that's a thing that a lot of realtors don't do, especially when things get slow. They kind of become lackadaisical. And that's, I find, when you really have to put in the time and the hours and invest in order to fill your pipeline so that you continue to be busy. I also learned that the customer is almost always right. If there's any way for that customer to be right, you make them right. And if you mess up, you apologize, you own up for it, and you fix it. And you treat your customers like gold because if you treat them like gold, they will treat you like gold. And you are very real and kind of honest with them about what is happening. And so, I feel like those have been the two pillars of my business and of what made me successful. And those are lessons I learned as an elementary kid watching my mom, put in 16-hour days at a cookie store growing up. And so I'm very thankful to have had that experience.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Getting that ingrained at an early age.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got a business undergraduate degree, and it's been fine. But I'm like, if someone was asking me today if I should go to college for business, I'd say just start a business.
That's how I feel too. I look at like business degrees and stuff, and tons of my clients have them and things, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I guess because I've never done that, I don't know, but I feel like you learn so much more just boots on the ground, starting a business and running it yourself. You do all the roles. You're the janitor, you're the bookkeeper, you're the marketing person. You have to learn how to do everything, and it's sink or swim, and so you're forced to really do it. So I agree with you. I would say just jump in and get in business.
Yep, yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, what would be some advice that you would give if there's someone that was interested in following your footsteps, starting a career in business? What are some things that you would recommend?
Have a lot of cash the first few years. I think that, I remember my ex-husband said it takes 3 years to really become established in real estate and start to make a good living. And I, like everybody else, was like, no way, it's not going to take me anywhere near that long. And he was 100% right. It took 3 years before I was making decent money. And I think that that's a shocking number when most people hear that. They think that they're going to be making good money within 6 months. And that's
Hmm.
just not the reality, at least in my experience of being in real estate, having coached a lot of realtors at this point. So I would say, have a lot of cash saved up because it's probably going to take 2 or 3 years before you're replacing your previous salary. So hopefully you have maybe a partner you can rely on for health benefits and things like that because it all gets expensive fast. And I think the big thing is when you're starting out, join a big brokerage where you have other people to learn from. You can sit open houses for other agents in your brokerage who are too busy to do their own open houses. You can do showings from them. You can ask them for resources for inspectors and painters and electricians and all of those kinds of things. And have a plan, really treat it like a business. I spent my first couple of years when I didn't have clients building a great website, building a CRM from scratch with all these workflows with tons of automated emails, building Google Forms. I spent my time putting systems into place and building systems, and that really set me up for success down the road. So when you're not with clients, think about what can you build and what systems can you put into place to grow this business over time.
No, I love it. Yeah, because there's a lot in that background that is important that people don't necessarily see
Yeah.
with having the lead flow, having the CRM. Yeah, and I think you highlighted several ways, but what are ways that you get your clients as a realtor?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's probably, it's similar to probably everybody else that's out there. When I talk with top realtors around the country, usually 80 to 90% of their business comes from their sphere. I am
Hmm.
very anti buying leads. I am an introvert, so I would rather be home in my pajamas working. COVID was my jam. I didn't have to leave my house for forever. I was like, this is perfect for me. I don't have to talk to anybody. This is great. I think you have to figure out what your strengths are as a realtor. I am not an extrovert. That is not my strength. So I'm not going to be door knocking. I'm not going to be cold calling. I'm not going to be working expireds or for sale by owners. I'm not going to be buying leads and having to pick up the phone and try to convert them quickly. Those have very, less than 1% conversion rate. So to me, none of those things give me a good ROI. They might be great for other people who are extroverts and they love doing those things, but for me, they're terrible for lead generation. What works really well for me is one on one. I'm good one on one with people. I care about people. I like people. I like educating them. And so when I can get into a one on one environment, this is going to sound funny, like an open house where I can start to talk to somebody one on one before they leave, get their information, and then follow up with them later and start to educate them on the market and their finances and what they can buy and, things like that. Hook them up with a lender, a financial planner, all of those things. That's exciting and interesting to me. Doing a lot of client events, client gifts, pop buys, pop ins, loving on my clients. That's a very natural thing for me to want to do. So I think you have to figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are and play to your strengths, and that will come across as authentic. And I think people want to work with people who feel like what they're doing is authentic. I don't know, what have you found has been kind of the best for you? I'm
The
curious.
same, yeah, the same. Your sphere, your database or data bank
Yep.
clients.
Yep.
um, and I look at it, you mentioned the financial planners. I look at it, I think the same way you do, right? Most of our clients feel like that our job is over when they get the keys to their house.
Hmm.
And I tell our clients, you know all the time that 60% of the value, with Shay, with myself, is really received for you after you close and you get your house, because there's a difference between buying a house and being a successful homeowner. And working with a professional realtor, is going to help you maximize the value of your house. Even something as simple as, you know do you know someone that does landscaping, painting? Or, hey, if I was to put $40,000 into my house, what would be the best way to use that for the resale value? And then for me, I've helped someone create probably the biggest debt that they've ever had. And so
Hmm.
I have this professional responsibility to help them manage that debt, lower the cost of borrowing over time, make
Yep.
sure that we're creating enough cash flow for them so that the other things that need to be happening are done. Whether that's maxing out the contribution of your 401k with that your employer matches, making sure you have adequate life and disability insurance, making sure you're funding that 529, connecting you with a great CPA, a great financial planner, so that you can keep more of the money that you make and help that money grow.
I agree with you 100%. I always joke with people at closings that they haven't gotten rid of me just because the property has closed, that they're stuck with me for life now. And I love those phone, I don't love it for them, but I love when there's a problem and they call me, at 8 o'clock at night because their basement's flooding and they don't know what to do. Or, they had hail damage on their roof or they had a pipe burst, like I want to be that person that they call in an emergency. And I'm like, okay, here's what you do. And I'm going to call my plumber. He's going to be over there in a couple of hours to help, fix it for you. I like being that problem solver,
Hmm.
and I think all of us, whether you're a mortgage lender, financial planner, realtor, whatever it is, it's important to have that lifelong relationship and be that go-to person for them where you're helping them with problems, you're helping them avoid problems. And as you said, you're connecting them with other people that can also fill that similar role in their life. To me, that's how you build a very strong foundation and get their referral business to their family and their friends, because so many realtors in particular drop them after the transaction ends. There was a great statistic about how 82% of buyers and sellers would use their realtor again in the future, but only 12% do. And the number one issue is they can't remember their realtor's name,
Hmm.
because we do a terrible job of staying in contact with people after the transaction ends. I feel like if every realtor just did a better job, mortgage lender, financial planner, everybody, of doing that, everybody's business would just skyrocket.
Yeah. I saw a graph. I'll have to send it to you, but it was or graphic, and it was basically like the forgettability score.
Hmm.
And because there's so much time between buying this house, buying the next house, potential other financial needs that people have. But like when you look at lenders and realtors, the only person that's more forgettable than us is like the mortician.
Totally.
Like everybody else, they remember, obviously, your hairstylist you see every month or two,
Yep.
your it goes all the way from like, email that you're in like several times a day to us and people that take care of you when you're dead. So
Yeah, and I think that statistic's only going to get worse, because I remember last fall when the buyer and seller guide kind of came out from the National Association of Realtors, that on average now people are planning to stay in their homes for 13 to 15 years, whereas
mhm.
before it was 5 to 7 years. So if they had trouble remembering our name after 5 to 7 years, can you imagine what it's going to be for 13 to 15 years? I remember I heard that statistic, and so the next night I put on some terrible, crappy romantic movies because I love them. Last night, my boyfriend came home and I was watching Christmas movies already. They were terrible. But I sat there with Chat GPT and I did blog posts on what do people need to know at the 10-year mark of owning a home, at the 12-year mark, at the 13, at the 15-year. How often should they have their roofs checked? And I ended up putting together a 15-year follow-up plan for clients where they hear from us every
Mm.
single month with tips on how often to check their roof, how often to have their sewer line rotted, all of those kinds of things, because I realized I needed to do a better job of staying in contact with them now for 15 years based on that statistic versus the 5 to 7 year plan that I had set up before. So I think all of us are going to have to do a better job for longer, unfortunately, than we've done in the past.
Right, right. Yeah, and and part of my job is to at least 4 times a year have this conversation with a client, and somewhere in there work in the, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you feel about your house?
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of people that are planning on staying in their house longer because they've got that trapped in feeling with the lower interest rate and the low payment,
Yep.
and they don't see, or they've not been exposed to the opportunities that might be there. Yeah, because your interest rate is low, but your equity in your house is super high, and a lot of people have a lot of non-mortgage debt where you know if you're not loving the house, what if
Yep.
we were to put together an equity transition plan where, we're getting out of this house, we're restructuring all your debts, hopefully getting you debt free, getting you into a new house with, maybe less money down, and yeah, maybe your house payment goes up, but your cash flow is way better, and you're able to fund the things that you haven't, because sooner or later we're all going to need to retire. Sooner
Yep.
or later kids are going to go to college. Sooner or later we're going to need, all of these things that we tend to put off. And so if we can fund all of those things, get you in a house that meets your needs, and give you some breathing room, that could be a much better experience than, oh, I've got this 3% mortgage over here on a house that I don't really love.
Totally. And the thing we've been telling our clients is you can always refinance, so maybe
Mhm.
that payment is higher for a year or two, and then down the road you can refinance. You can get a credit from the seller to buy down the interest rate, either
Mhm.
permanently or temporarily, or if you really don't want to sell your house because your interest rate is so low, what about holding on to it, renting it out? Buying a different house that better fits your needs, and then you're still kind of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting a house that works for you, and you're still building equity in that other house at that really low interest rate. So I totally agree with you. I think those are conversations that people need to be having with their financial planners and their lenders, over the course of the year to figure out, what makes the most sense. Because I think they just get so locked into thinking, well, I can't move. There are no options because my interest rate is so low. And as you just said, oftentimes there are some really great options out there.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And sometimes I think that education piece,
Hmm.
is huge. I think down the road, as our industries progress, that education is going to be even more important because, the back in the day, right, they had like loose leaf notebooks with, listings and page protectors you could see, and you had to go to the realtor to see
Yep.
houses. Now, you simply Google an address and you're going to have all these different sites and all the different ways to know, what someone thinks it's worth or whatever. But what you don't have is that education, that advice, and which can really save you tens of thousands of dollars, not only off the purchase of the house, but long term.
And I think that's the key that a lot of realtors don't realize. And we have so much of that information in our head, but most realtors are not good about getting it out of their head into a place that is accessible for consumers to access, 24 hours a day. That's why that first year when I built my website, it was all that. It was educating people on the local market and how does earnest money work in Illinois? How many payments are there? Can you get it back if you cancel the contract after you under contract? Because those are all things that national sites like Zillow, Redfin, they don't answer those questions. They do a great job of answering questions about the house. They have mortgage calculators, they can, give you estimates of what the house is worth, but they're not answering the nitty-gritty details of how real estate works in the Chicagoland area for people. And I feel like that's the missing piece for most consumers is they want to understand how does it work, how do inspections work in my area, how much do they cost, can I cancel after inspection, what's my point where I can't cancel, all of those kinds of things. And that's the value that we provide to people oftentimes without realizing it, where we can do a better job than, the online aggregators, Zillow, Redfin, realtor.com, etc.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And I understand, some of where it came from, but a few months ago there was like a list of 185 things that realtors do, for
Mhm.
clients. And, and a lot of them, I was just kind of scanning it, were like kind of pencil pushing things. But like what you're talking about is 100% why
Yep.
you should partner with a great agent, because it's not, you know, you can get someone to do the $5 an hour, $10 an hour work of, paperwork stuff. But what you really need is someone who, is like a whitewater river rafting guide. You know,
Yep.
I'm not going to do that, without a guide, and it's worth every penny that you're paying to this person to make sure that you don't end up smashed on some rock. And it's the same thing with, working with a great realtor, working with a great lender, working with a great CPA and a great financial planner and an insurance person to
Yep.
make sure that, you're totally covered and that you have a plan for everything.
100%. And I think I think I would also add on to that, not just guide, but also therapist at the same time.
Right.
Because I think one of the things that's different about buying real estate is that it's such an emotional, personal decision to people. It's not like buying a shirt or a car or something like that. And so emotions get very heightened. And so oftentimes people make really poor decisions because they're emotional about it. And so having, a professional who can stop you and be like, hey, in a nice way, you're kind of getting crazy. Like, let's take a couple steps back here and remember what our goal was, why we were doing this. I say to clients all the time, I don't think it's worth what you're willing to pay for this house. I think you're overpaying because you're emotionally involved.
Hmm.
Like let's take a step back here, and does that actually make sense if you take your emotions out of it? Should we wait and try to find a different property where you're not overpaying so much? Or, this is the perfect house for you. You're just scared, and like, how do we work through that, right? So I think it's definitely part guide, and it's also really part therapist a lot of days. So
100%. Well, and 100% that, you know, I'm sure you see it, occasionally, right? When, because no one's going to make an offer on a house that they don't see themselves living in. And so when they make the offer on the house and something happens and they get beat out, that person stole my house. It's like, well, it
totally.
wasn't your house.
Yep.
You've never had any ownership of the house, but in your mind and in
Yep.
your heart, that was my house, you
Yep.
know? And so yeah, having that, that person that is, engaged but detached enough to be able to say, hey, have you thought about this? Or, because you don't want to overpay, but at the
Right.
same time, you don't want to squander an opportunity simply because, you know, you're naturally nervous.
Totally. And I think that's the thing too, right? Like in terms of overpaying, you can't rely on the online algorithms like Zillow and stuff to actually give you a fair estimate of value. So we just had one for a client yesterday where, it's priced around 5 million. It's priced low. They just did a massive price drop, and so we were able to confidently say to that client, like, this house is priced low at 4.95 million. It's going to sell fast. Here are the comps. And that, is making them more comfortable to put an offer in. And on the flip side, I'll have other clients, buying a $500,000 property house. And I'm like, this is way overpriced. Like, you shouldn't pay more than 450 for this. And so I think, just having that kind of independent expert to be able to guide you on the price, makes a huge difference as well. Because those are really hard comps to try to pull on your own online if you don't have access to the MLS. I've tried before to see what it's like for consumers on Zillow. It's really hard to do it accurately.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm friends with appraisers, and one in particular was like, hey, when was the last time Zillow went into your house? Never. They've
Exactly.
never been into
Sure.
your house. They
Yeah.
don't know, I mean, I'm not a realtor, so I don't have the access to that. But if I were and I was going to someone's house to price it, I would,
Mhm.
probably what you do, I've got a range. And
Yep.
then, you walk in there, you're like, oh, you got 20 cats. Okay, lower end, or
Exactly. Yep.
or
Yep.
you've updated everything higher end. But
Exactly.
until you walk in there and and you see what potential buyers are going to walk in there and see it, you know it, you don't know.
I always tell sellers and buyers, like, I will not give you a price for a property if we have not stepped foot in it. We have to see the house
Right.
first. Exactly that. I don't know if it smells like cat pee. If so, like, that's going to take the value way down. I don't know if the basement ceiling is 6 foot tall and it looks taller in the pictures. Like, these are all things we can't figure out how they affect the price unless we actually see the house in person. So I refuse to give pricing until we go see a house in person, and then I will give you the pricing. But that can make a huge difference. Like you said, Zillow doesn't know, and they don't know if you finished your basement or, whatever you've done to the house.
Right. And to me, it's the same thing. It's like, hey, what are your rates today?
Right.
It's like, I have no idea.
Right.
I don't know
Yep.
what loan program. I don't know what you're putting down. I don't know your credit score. I don't
Yep.
know any of the other 25 things that I need to know to come up with the rate. And, you know, yeah, same thing.
And they could change in 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You
You
know?
know, yeah, everybody's buying stocks. And so mortgage-backed securities are taking a beating today. So that's,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
everybody's 401k is going up. So they'll feel good about themselves.
I keep checking it every day. Like, I've been checking it like twice a day the past week since the election. I'm like, oh, these are good numbers for my 401k. I'll take this. I'm like, okay, all right. Yep.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But it's good. And the thing too is like, you know, people get focused on the wrong thing. Like, oh, these rates are too high. Well, compared to what? You
100%.
know, I mean, compared to not getting equity in a house and whatever, renting for the rest of your life, or God
Yep.
forbid, staying in your parents' basement until you're 50. You know,
Yep.
what are your options?
Yep. Well, and I always tell people, when I was a kid, when I was in elementary, my parents' interest rate was 18%. And that didn't stop people from buying and selling houses. That was just the cost of doing business and buying a house. And the historical average is 8%. So right now, we're actually still below the historical average for an interest rate. It feels high to us because we got so used to these ridiculously low interest rates, which I don't think we'll ever get back to that again.
Right.
I'm hoping we'll be in the fives at some point. I think it's, unlikely potentially that we'll get to the fours. And I tell my clients, like, we're never seeing twos and threes again. So if you're waiting for that, like, you're going to be waiting until you die, in my opinion. So, you're better off buying something now, refinancing in the future when the rates go down, and at least building equity now and getting the tax deductions, right? It still makes
Right.
sense to me to buy real estate.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Rates are cyclical,
Hmm.
and I agree. There was a lot of pain involved in those twos and threes,
Hmm.
and we've experienced a lot of pain after that, in the housing market and the mortgage and real estate market. But yeah, and my job is always to look for opportunities for my clients to get cheaper money.
Yep.
So we're taking care of that part. And why not do a no point, no fee refinance when it makes sense, where you're basically um, uh, saving money from day one,
Hmm.
but uh, you know again, get the house now, get that equity, start building the equity. Even the best stock traders, bond traders, they're never timing the market. They're
Right.
simply they're simply getting in.
Yep.
And I think it was even Warren Buffett that's like, basically, how long do you want to hold things forever?
Yep. Yep. Totally. Well, and my concern, is that as soon as the interest rates come down, the market is going to get even more flooded with buyers. And so prices are going to go up, So, we're having what I think are very savvy buyers right now come to us and say, hey, we want to look at buying this winter because we're concerned when interest rates go up next spring. Spring market is always crazy, that it's going to be even more crazy. And we're going to be paying an extra 100,000 for the house that we could get, now for $100,000 less. We'd rather take the hit on the interest rate right now and then refinance in 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is, and get a lower rate then. And we saved 100,000 buying the house. So, that's more my concern, is that I think that prices are just going to skyrocket when the interest rates go down, because I think this inventory shortage that we have is going to continue for a long time because people don't want to give up their houses in the twos and the threes for the most part unless they have to. And so I see this inventory shortage continuing for probably the next decade. So I'm telling all my buyers, like, get in now and buy if you can.
100%. Yeah. The number I heard was that every 1% decrease in interest rates on mortgages, you have about 1 to 2 million more people that are now
Yep.
able to buy. And that's what we're advising our clients. It's like, never advise you to buy a house you don't like. But
Sure.
now is the opportunity.
Yep.
We have a little more inventory than we did this time last year. It's still low, but it's a little bit better than what it was.
Yep.
Interest rates are higher than what you would think that they would be with the Fed lowering their rate. That being said, you have an opportunity now to negotiate a little bit more than what you had before, and you're 100%. These rates drop in the spring, and you take a normal spring market and rates dropping, and you know they're and the fact that I think we're at like 25 to 30% of the inventory that we had prior to the crash.
Yep.
So, you know, and builders, they can't build fast enough. So, we are going to be in this situation, and will it be as crazy in 20 as in 21? I don't know, but I know that uh, opportunities show up and then they leave pretty much as quickly as they show up. And so
Mm.
when you see the opportunity, you need to take it.
Yes, I completely agree with you. Absolutely.
So, well, I know that real estate is a 24/7 activity, but what are some things that you enjoy doing when you're not doing real estate, other than watching Christmas music, movies,
Oh
and
no.
romantic movies?
Oh, I have terrible, terrible movie choices that I like to watch. I like to read. I'm in a book club. I'm very nerdy. So yes, so books are great for me. I like to travel. I go to the gym a lot. I usually work out like 6 days a week, and I think, what I found was in my 20s and my 30s and I'm in my late 40s now, in my early 40s, I worked like a dog. I worked 16 hours a week, 7 days a week. And that was a huge mistake. And I should not have done that. And, it wasn't good for my health, my relationships, my family, etc. And so now I've really realized work is important, but it's not the be all end all. It's important to put myself first. And so I very much carve out time to go to the gym 6 days a week and work out, go for walks outside when the weather is nice. And I like to go and do a lot of new fun things. So my boyfriend and I we'll go. We just went to a crafting class the other week. We went to this crazy Monopoly thing, the game show type of thing that we did. We're going to go see a play this weekend. So I just like to get out and do fun things that I haven't done before. So I'm always kind of looking and sending him ideas. And he's like, 90% of the time he's like, okay. And then 10% he's like, nope, that sounds too crazy. I'm not doing that. So, I think like there's so many cool things to do, in the city, in the suburbs and stuff. Just get out and try some fun new stuff. Life is short, so go enjoy it.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm sure a lot of people would love to get a hold of you and talk all things real estate. What's the best way for people to contact you?
Sure. So you can look me up online on Instagram. It's Shay Hata, Shay Lawrence Hata. Otherwise on Facebook, or you can email me at shay@buyselllovechicago.com. So that's shay@buyselllovechicago.com. Our team name is the Buy Sell Love Chicago team. So you can also Google us and find our website and reach me there as well. So lots of ways to get a hold of me.
I love it. I love it. Well, I want to thank everyone for listening to the podcast today. We are the Financial Advantage, powered by the Wells Funding Group. You can reach the team and I at 219-230-8400. And we would love it if you would like and subscribe on whatever platform that you're enjoying this on. And of course, share this episode with 3 or 4 other people who are interested in real estate in Chicago. Shay, thank you again for joining us here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
You bet.